I love how this particular news article shocked people in the West to the point where it was trending on Twitter. Yes, Japan does censor a lot, but it censors for different things. And what's interesting is the difference in culture. Like here in the West, violence in fiction is acceptable. You can go all the way out when it comes to violence. And if you look at The Walking Dead, they had the producer explaining how much effort they put into the special effects to make some of the kill scenes as gory and as disturbing as possible. And here in the West, most people aren't disturbed anymore. I mean, you look at Mortal Kombat and some of the fatalities there, they're over the top and hilarious, but they're not getting censored anymore, right? Like, no one is that upset with violence. Now, if you talk about sexuality, oh my god. Especially look at what PlayStation censors. There are romance comedies that are very tame, but they show a little bit of booba here and there. You know, you get a little bit of a succubus, a little bit of a suck. That gets censored. Like a little bit of skin. You know, if it's in a video game, it's muy problematica. Like, they don't like that. In Japan, it's the other way around. I mean, there are some hentais and romance novels that, let's just say, would put you in prison in some Western states. Right? And then allowed in Japan. Like, for example, the 1,000-year-old lolly vampire. No, that's problematic. Okay? Like, that shouldn't exist. But they allow that in Japan. However, when it comes to violence, it's a lot more restrictive. Now, it doesn't mean that violence doesn't exist in Japan in the media and in fiction. Of course it does. But it has much more stricter rules, what it's allowed to be, in what circumstances. And the best example I can give is if you guys remember Dragon Ball Z, it was very gory. Right? Like, almost every scene had Goku covered in blood, head to toe. There were certain aspects of it where an android, like, just pushes his hand through Yamcha and murders him like that in cold blood. The scene where Cell just steps on the head of the android, just completely smashing it. So it was a very violent show for teenage boys. But when you look at Dragon Ball Super, most of that violence is now toned down. Why? Because different rules of censorship, and it's because of the time slot where Dragon Ball Super was aired at. So you can air certain things on TV, but you have to be careful of the time slot. So my point is, like, yeah, like, Japanese people, they censor. It's just that they censor different things. And they have different sensibility levels. Like, for example, if you guys remember Dragon Ball, there's a famous scene in the episode where Goku is a little kid and Bulma is also underage and they're sleeping together. And at one point, Goku, you know, he feels weird that Bulma does have no balls in the underwear. So, like, he pulls her underwear down in order to see why that is, because he never seen a girl before. Now, all of that is done for comedy relief. Like, it's not supposed to be sexual or titillating or anything like that. It's just, like, completely comical. But that scene was removed in the West for obvious reasons. They didn't air that on television. But in Japan, it was no problem. Right? So, like, the sensibilities are different. Now, when we look at this video game, which is something that I am definitely interested in, I would recommend it. If you happen to like horror games, definitely keep an eye on this. Next year is going to be a really good year for the horror enthusiasts. We're getting a Alone in the Dark remake. We're getting a Silent Hill remake. We're getting this. We're getting a Dead Space remake. So there's a lot of horror games coming up. I hope they're good. But as you can see, the game is very violent. Now, it takes place on the moon of Jupiter, I believe. And you get to play as a convict in a prison. And there's an outbreak. And you have to survive. Now, apparently, the game is very gruesome, very violent. If it's anything similar to Dead Space, there's probably going to be dismemberment in it. Because that's the way you would destroy enemies in Dead Space. You would cut off their limbs in order for them to stop walking. And it's part of the horror aspect, like seeing a monster just crawling to you with its legs blown up, wanting revenge. So it created really nice atmosphere, and it was a great game. And I think, like, some elements of that may be in here, which is why it got banned from Japan. And of course, you know, Japanese people can, you know, go on the 7 seas and still play the game. But the problem is, this is why you see less violence in video games. Like, if you're a fan of Mortal Kombat, if you're a fan of horror, and you like a little bit of over-the-top violence in your fiction, this is why you see less of it. It's because the people who want to sell the game, right, the creators, they want to appeal to the international market, so they take into account the sensibilities of Japan, and they're trying to tone down the game. And it's a lot easier to just tone down the entire thing than to make like different versions of the game for different countries. And this is why, even though Japanese people can, of course, go on the 7 seas and play the game, if it's banned in their country, the thing is, like, that's not the main point. The main point is that the developers themselves are going to censor based on Japan, based on China, based on Western sensibilities, and you're going to have the type of garbage, watered-down games that we have now, which are definitely nothing like the games that we grew up with. Let me know what you guys think, though. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.